Here's my question to you guys. Let's say the Niners go into Philly and lose, which it frankly looks like they're going to do. They're 2.5-point underdogs. And I just don't know how you could expect the Niners to win such a crucial game without Tatum Bethune. So if they lose, one and done, was it a successful season? Was it a good season? 12 wins. They were 12-4 at one point. They won 6 games in a row. Heading into week 18, we were talking about how they, if they just won this one game, they'd be the Super Bowl favorite. Kyle Shanahan, coach of the year. We saw, some people talking about how Brock Purdy should get MVP votes despite missing 8 games this season. I mean, the narratives were incredible. Then they lose one game to Seattle by 10. If they lose this game to Philly, was it a successful season? I don't think so. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm a hater. But it would feel kind of like what Minnesota did last year. Minnesota had this great year and won all these games and put up numbers in the regular season, but when it really, 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 really counted, they just fell on their face. And I don't think they look back at the 2024 Vikings as some type of, special experience. I mean, it was so traumatic for them that they got rid of their quarterback when maybe they shouldn't have. They had to make drastic changes at the end of that season because of 2 games. So if the Niners lose to the Eagles, I mean, you could say, yeah, they exceeded expectations, but how many games did they win that surprised you? How many games did they win this season that they really shouldn't have won? 1? 2. Week 1 against Seattle and week 5 against the Rams. But since week 5, they've won the games they're supposed to win and they lost the games they were supposed to lose. They're a second-tier team that to me was largely carried by their old core of players. And if you're going to talk about this season being a successful season, you could point to the 2023 Rams who were coming off a Super Bowl win. No. They were coming off a 5 and whatever season the year after winning the Super Bowl. 5-12. Then 2023, they do what the Niners did this year, which is get rid of a bunch of older players, take on a bunch of dead cap, and reset. And then won 10 games, lost in the first round of the playoffs, and they thought that was a very successful season, and it was because they had added so many young foundational players. Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, guys like that. 2023, Byron Young, Jared Verse. I mean, they were amassing this incredible next generation of Rams, and that's why they're good right now. They're a young team. That's not what the Niners did this year. Upton Stout might be part of that group in the future. Alfred Collins and CJ West might be part of that group in the future. But what other young players look like future Ring of Honor guys, future All-Pros? It's still all about Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings. So to me, I talked about this with my dad yesterday on the Cohn Zone. It feels more like the last gasp of a aging team than the first season of a young team. I didn't phrase that well, but you know what I'm talking about. Given how Kyle Shanahan really leaned into the older players on offense and was featuring Demarcus Robinson and playing no rookies, I think they got to win a playoff game to consider this a good season. I'm not saying fire people, but I don't see how you give this team like a big round of applause for going one and done in the playoffs if they do. Here's a fact. It doesn't really matter when you think a head coach should or shouldn't get fired. It's all about the owner and what he can and can't take. And Jed has become a very patient man. He likes this setup he has with Kyle Shanahan where they're good and relevant but not quite good enough. The one thing Jed really doesn't seem to like, the Yorks, is losing at home, getting embarrassed at home by the Seahawks. 3 times in York history have the Niners lost at home to the Seahawks and scored 3 points. First time was in 04. At the end of the year, they fired the head coach, Dennis Erickson. Second time was in 2014. A few weeks later, they fired the head coach, Jim Harbaugh. Third time was a few nights ago. I'm not saying they're going to fire Kyle Shanahan, but the season isn't over. And you never know how a billionaire thinks. I don't know. All I'm saying is I was there the night that Jim Harbaugh lost at home to the Seahawks on Thanksgiving on national television. Jed York was so embarrassed, he put out a tweet before I got to the interview room apologizing to the fans. York now is, 11 years older, much wiser, not going to make that mistake twice, but you don't think he felt the same way? You don't think he felt livid and embarrassed scoring 3 points? You think he understood this time? You don't think he was in his luxury suite ready to punch a wall? I bet he was. And if they go to the NFC Championship game this year, I bet he'd be hugging the Shanahans and campaigning for Mike to be in the Hall of Fame. But if they lose and they scored 3 points or 7 against the Eagles, I wonder what Jed would do. He's kind of emotional.